Okay, on the podcast, the outrageous sweetheart deal between the government and Iwi, which takes taxpayers for fools. The apartment block that Kāinga Ora sold to Wellington Iwi Taranaki whānau for a song, which is then immediately flipped for 3 times the price to a private developer. So many questions. Who is protecting the value to the taxpayer of the taxpayer's asset? Why sell to Iwi so cheap, allowing them to pocket $2 million by flipping what they just purchased? It smells fishy. It looks like taxpayers got a raw deal. Housing expert Ashley Church and former broadcaster turned real estate man Rawdon Christie. My Monday panel, let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, proudly sponsored by the Brothers Green. Unlock the innate power of New Zealand botanicals to support your mobility. Try the Brothers Green New Zealand Move Joint Support Tonic and join over 20,000 other Kiwis experiencing easier movement. For as little as $1 a day, you too can experience the power of New Zealand hemp seed oil for your joint health. Head to brothersgreen.co and use code DG20 at the checkout for 20% off your first order. It's a good one. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Duncan Garner. Nice to have your company, and please subscribe. But thanks again, of course, to the Brothers Green and Christchurch for their support and partnership in getting this podcast to air. We have launched our paid subscription service as well, so for just $7.99 a month, you can become part of Team Duncan every week. So there'll be more content, more episodes, interviews, and my weekly newsletter. You'll all still get the podcast, of course, but if you're a paying subscriber, you will get other content just for you exclusively. Doing this work costs lots of money, of course, and I need your support to keep it going. Crucially, your support, your $7.99 a month, keeps this podcast on air and keeps independent media alive. You're part of Team Duncan, you're part of it. We do and say stuff that other mainstream media won't cover and won't say. By subscribing and paying just $7.99 a month, you can guarantee that we will remain on air. To subscribe, you can head to wherever you get your podcast. It's all there. As I said, we do and say things and tackle the issues that other media are too scared to touch. Like tonight's issue, which traditional media sneer at or shy away from for fear of being called racist. I'm doing this tonight because this system favours Māori over everyone else when it comes to the purchase of Crown land. It isn't working for the rest of us taxpayers because we have been sold down the river by the Crown agency Kāinga Ora. They've sold Iwi an apartment block in Wellington's CBD, a 117-unit block valued at least $4 million, but with a rating valuation of $18.9 million. They've sold it to the Iwi for just $1 million under the treaty settlement process, being offered the first right of refusal. And they have disposed of this within 2 weeks of getting it. Taranaki whānau got it for just $1.03 million. The true market value is $4 million plus. Did they hang on to it because they didn't want it? Fall into private hands? Not at all. They flipped it just 3 weeks after buying it, and they sold it for 3 times the price they bought it for, pocketing an easy $2 million. Why didn't Kāinga Ora and the government sell it at the open market? Why did they eventually give it away, allowing Iwi to profiteer and engineer this deal? Who has our back? The taxpayers' back. Some people will find this not a big deal. I tend to think that maybe the taxpayers are being shafted here. They resold Wellington's Dixon Street flats for just over $3 million after buying it from Kāinga Ora for $1 million. The sale's been criticised by ex-housing spokesman who questioned Kāinga Ora's decision to sell below the market value. Iwi flipped these Dixon Street flats for just over $3 million. Less than 3 weeks after buying the block from Kāinga Ora for almost a third of the price. Property records show that Taranaki whānau, the commercial organisation set up to manage the treaty settlement package for Wellington Iwi, sold the landmark social housing block to a company linked to prominent developer, he's a Wellington developer, Ian Castles. Both sale prices were significantly below the property's market value of $4 million and the RV, of course, of $18.9 million. The flip's been criticised by the ACT Party, by housing spokesman Cameron Luxton, who has called on Kāinga Ora to explain why it sold the property for the price it did. No one, he says, would behave like this if it was their own money on the line. Of course they wouldn't. It looks like they scammed themselves, says Luxton from the ACT Party. Now, on an earlier podcast, I told you that Kāinga Ora had sold these cheaply to the local iwi. What we didn't know back then was what they were going to do with them, but we speculated that the iwi was in cahoots with local developer Ian Castles, and of course, it's proved to be the case. Despite getting a valuation of $4 million before the sale, Kāinga Ora pushed ahead with the sale to iwi for just over $1 million in June of this year. So they had a valuation of 4 and they sold it for 1. Who in the real world does that? Who has a valuation of $4 million of their own money and it would accept $1 million? What bloody idiots. 20 days after they bought it, the Iwi flipped it and sold it to Castles. Sold it to his development company for $3.04 million, making a tidy $2 million in just 20 days. Now, that's the sort of thing people used to moan about. $2 million they made in 20 days. Both transactions settled, of course, on the same day, August the 14th. What a cosy deal. The losers here are the taxpayers, who did not get a good price for the sale of their asset. Taxpayer-owned flats, that's their asset. Imagine if we sold all public assets via a process like this. Private developers with links to Iwi would get the inside track and first dibs on buildings. The Iwi would have the first genuine right of refusal on the government-owned land and property, so they can make some money as well. They can all become very wealthy. And the middleman, like us, and middlemen, just muddling away in society, we get no access to this. But basically what the Iwi's done here, they've acted as a middleman, haven't they? The go-between, if you like. And here they are pocketing millions for effectively what amounts to flipping. If Kāinga Ora had been commercially savvy and put the interest of taxpayers first, none of this would have happened. Did they try the open market? No. They claimed they had a look around, but no. Why did they allow this building to be sold so cheaply? It just doesn't make sense. I get it that it needs a lot of work, but 117 apartments are worth more surely than $1.03 million. And of course they are, because that's what Castles paid. He paid $3.03. But the Iwi only paid $1.03. But to make $2 million in just over 2 weeks of merely passing it on says to me that Kāinga Ora knew exactly what was going on here and approved it by the mere sale price. They enabled it with a low price. They enabled this to happen. $2 million. Who else gets that privilege and opportunity to make $2 million in 20 days? Who has the taxpayers back here? Why didn't we get a fair market price for this building? And if we carry on in this vein, taxpayers will continue to be shafted, and Māori elite and their close mates will get shoulder tapped and get inside tracks not available to everyone else. In fact, doing it this way ensures only Māori and their chosen mates have an inside track. This deal's sniffy. It needs to be looked at, I think, by the Auditor General. Maybe nothing in it, but it just doesn't seem right, does it? I hope the IRD take note as well, because flipping houses so quickly triggers the bright line test, and Iwi should be paying a hefty tax on that $2 million profit. Shouldn't they? Will they? Do they even pay tax? I'm not even sure of that. Daniel Selton, who's Kāinga Ora's Deputy Chief Executive for Central Region, defended the sale of the heritage protected property. He said that Taranaki Whānui had initially offered to pay a lot less. That's what he's told One Roof. He says the opening offers they made on the property were low. We negotiated with them to bring the price up. While the $1.04 million price that we received and settled on was nearly $3 million lower than the market valuation we had obtained, there was no guarantee we would get a higher price if we put the property on the open market, given its challenges and the scale of investment needed. Taranaki Whānui and Housing Minister Chris Bishop aren't saying much at all. It's all a bit hush-hush, isn't it? Bishop says, quote, commercial decisions by Taranaki Whānui are matters for them, but any redevelopment of the Dixon Street flats is good news for Wellington. Minimalistic, wasn't it? Commenting on the sale to Iwi in August, Bishop said it was a good outcome for Wellington. Adding, he said, I look forward to seeing what they do with it. Well, I'll tell you what they did with it, Chris. They flipped it. They flipped it for a $2 million profit. They did nothing to it and made $2 million. What other agency, what other organisation gets that benefit in New Zealand? Only the Māori, only a Māori agency, because we're a Māori or a tribe, because they have first dibs on this land. And then Castles in cahoots with them, buys it for $3, and he's away. Ex-housing spokesman has criticised Kāinga Ora, as I said earlier on. He says if there's a valid reason for selling for less than the market value, the public hasn't heard it, and we haven't. Taxpayers will only have confidence in Kāinga Ora's ability to deliver value for money when its decisions are transparent and defensible. Giving Iwi the first right of refusal did not mean settling for less than market value. Iwi, and this has been understood for years, Iwi absolutely have first right of refusal under the treaty settlements process. It doesn't mean we've got to give the stuff away, does it? First right of refusal means first right of refusal. It doesn't say we must lowball it and give it, effectively give it to them for free. These assets belong to taxpayers, folks. And Kāinga Ora has a duty to get the best possible return, I would have thought. A Labour Party spokesperson, well, let me guess here, they'll be too afraid to say anything about Māori. That's negative. A Labour Party spokesperson said it did not have enough details about the plans for the Dixon Street site. Of course they didn't. They didn't go looking for any information either. Isn't it funny when something doesn't look right, how little politicians have to say if they're feeling a bit uncomfortable about the target? Kāinga Ora likely ran this deal by the government beforehand, given the sensitive nature and the low ball price. Whether anyone knew that Iwi was going to flip it so quickly is anyone else's guess, really. I suggest they were likely all in the know, given how little they're all now saying. Once again, it's nice work if you can get it. Nice money. Nice profit if you can get it. Iwi has $2 million. Castles has a property for next to nothing. And both will gain substantially. And us, taxpayers, well, we are here and we're forced to grin and bear it. We will ask questions, but we'll be kept out of the loop. And we are much, much more worse off compared to yesterday because we gave this thing away effectively. I think it stinks. This process isn't right. It pushes Pākehā New Zealanders to the back of the queue, promotes Māori and their close mates to the front of the queue, and they get a highly profitable sweetheart deal that the left has been so critical about in recent years. But they're saying nothing now. Gutless. The lack of transparency and accountability is staggering. And who made what and when and is tax even being paid isn't clear at all. But we do know that there are a couple of big winners here, and no wonder they're not saying much at all because they're running. Okay?
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Right, every Monday I'll be joined on the panel by Ashley Church and former broadcaster and now real estate man Rawdon Christie. And we'll talk about issues that emerged from the weekend, also obviously what I've just talked about then as well. But guys, Ashley and Rawdon, welcome to the program. Nice to see you both.
Good to see you, mate. Good to see you both.
Yeah,
Rawdon,
g'day, Duncan.
Going? Ashley, good to see you, mate.
Yeah, good. Hey, listen, I'm a little bit concerned because you've had your hair done over the weekend, so you're looking sort of puffed up, and Rawdon's got his typical fading Hugh Grant looks. I'm not entirely sure I still fit the tone of the show.
Well, there's two things going on here. One, you can't grow it as long as Rawdon, and two, you haven't got enough to cut like mine. So you're stuffed, Ashley. It's 2-1.
You throw the insults. I think Duncan's right. We win.
Yeah. Rawdon, what are you up to? How's it going?
Oh, busy as heck. It's a sort of a 7-day-a-week life. Very, very different from my broadcasting days, but it's great. Full on, very all-consuming. It's in this real estate world, you get out what you put in. And if you're willing to put the hard slog in, you'll get the results.
And it's been a hard year, right?
Oh, this is hard number 3 year, I think. So it's the three tough years, and you'll see a vast number of my colleagues who may have just paused their careers potentially, or aren't doing any business, and then there's a group of us who are knuckling down and getting onto it. But good homes will sell. Vendors who are realistic will sell. So business carries on.
Are you seeing some growth? Are you seeing some movement, some activity? We're seeing a lot of activity and remember, I'm based in Eastern Auckland, Remuera area and the suburbs here, but a lot of our sort of $1 to $1.5 million, lot of demand suddenly on. The slightly higher end phones, they'll start picking up now because there's so little on the market at that end. People have chosen to wait. So I think there'll be stimulus between now and Christmas. And also, we're not seeing the normal huge flood of October listings yet. So the supply and demand equation may well help stimulate the market a bit. Yeah, and daylight saving and everything comes on. You've picked this right and wrong over the years, Ashley. What's going to happen?
I have no idea. Rawdon and I were talking about this last week. I was saying to him, if you go between 1980 and 2020, I could have told you with precision exactly what was happening to the market. But pretty much since the end of 2021 and that change that took place as a result of the Reserve Bank's extraordinary measures to try and get inflation under control, it's just not come back to any degree of normality.
No, it's really it's a hard one to pick, isn't it? Because I would have thought it might bounce now with summer, Rawdon. You've got daylight saving, you've got people coming to the market, but who knows?
The Reserve Bank will do I hope they'll do what they can in the next couple of months. I hope we'll see 50, 75 basis points in the next 2 drops before Christmas. But the reality is there are so many international factors now affecting people's confidence, and they want to be able to take a bit of risk or to do something. That's the problem. It's not really about the Reserve Bank right now.
Yeah, no, our confidence is really shot. Let me just take away and talk about Winston Peters' statement on Palestinian Authority or Palestinian state. What's your take on it, Ashley? You followed this up really closely. Are you surprised at New Zealand's position?
I'm extraordinarily surprised and I'm extraordinarily pleased. So as you know, Duncan, I've spent the last few months giving Winston a pretty hard time and criticising him about what I saw as the difference between the position that he took prior to the last election and the position that he appeared to be taking with regard to Israel. And I've been, as I say, very blunt and very harsh in my assessment of the position he took. Look, based on what he's done now, I now understand what he was doing, and I was completely wrong. And I'm absolutely willing to concede that. This statement that he's made over the last few days at the UN, at a breakfast meeting in the UN, was exactly what was needed from somebody who was acting as a statesman. I won't go through the whole statement, but basically he said three things. He said that anybody recognising Palestine now would risk being exploited by Hamas, who would see it as a propaganda win, would push Israel toward even more entrenched military positions, and you could already see that starting to happen, and would serve as little more than an existential act of defiance, which is a great quote, and it's exactly what's happened with the handful of nations that we've heard about over the last week or so, particularly the UK, who a day after announcing that they would recognise a Palestinian state, Abbas Mahmoud of the Palestinian Authority presented them with a bill for, I think, $2 trillion worth of reparations, supposedly for the confiscation of land. So look, I think what he's done's brilliant. I disagreed with him on a couple of points. He's doubled down on his criticism of Israel itself, and he's basically saying that Israel has taken extraordinary steps and it's gone too far. I disagree with that, and I disagree with a couple of the other points that he's made, but I completely get why he said it. And I understand now why he's taken the measures that he's taken over the last couple of years in the context of that viewpoint. So I'm delighted. And I have to say right now, I'm very, very proud to be a New Zealander. Yeah,
which is the opposite you're hearing from the opposition parties, Rawdon. They're saying this is an act of defiance from the New Zealand government, that it goes against our morals and our values, and there are all sorts of betrayal. The word betrayal is being used to our values. What do you make of it?
Well, I'm as surprised as everyone else. I said on a panel a week ago. It was after the UK and Canada made their position clear. I said, well, I just assumed we'd follow. So I am surprised. I live in a divided household here, and this is interesting. So I have a lot of fantastic debate daily with my young adult children who refuse to leave the house. And so I get their viewpoint, because I was a bit like Ashley initially, because I'm not looking so much as this is a Palestine-Israel issue, but as a Hamas issue. And I just think we are losing sight of who Hamas is and what they've done in the past, and probably what they're still doing. And we have to keep that at the forefront of the decisions we're making. Whereas my younger, wonderful people see the emotional side of this, and they're just saying, we need to do whatever we can to reduce the carnage. And that starts with Netanyahu. So why would we not identify Palestine? Whereas I'm sitting there saying, I think by endorsing potentially Hamas, is that really going to stop the carnage? So, I mean, Waz is a very shallow viewpoint, and it's based on life and death rather than the politics, which Ashley is so very in tune with.
It legitimizes them, Ashley, doesn't it?
Say again?
By giving them nationhood status from New Zealand's point of view, it legitimizes Hamas. Whatever we say and do in New Zealand doesn't mean jack, to be honest.
Well, I think it does. And it's interesting because there's been a bit of criticism about, the fact that we're not standing alongside traditional allies. Well, it depends on which traditional allies you're talking about. The United States, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Japan, Singapore, they're all saying basically the same thing that we are in various different ways. So the fact that Australia and Canada and the UK have drunk the Kool-Aid doesn't invalidate our position in any way. But it's interesting, and Rawdon's right, there's this massive division. And so when you look, I'm not suggesting that social media is necessarily an accurate barometer of public opinion, but as you know, I post on this stuff a lot, and I do pretty well in respect of the responses that I get to posting. But on both LinkedIn and Facebook over the last couple of days, overwhelmingly in support of what Peters has done, which suggests to me that this is not just a smart political move, it's probably in the context of the coming election, a smart electoral move as well.
I think it's a complex issue, but I think this is a really sophisticated statement. Rawdon. That's a really sophisticated positioning statement.
As a statesman, as an international statesman.
Yeah, and I'll say I was surprised to hear it. I assumed what you just said, that we would simply go with our traditional allies and step in line. But it does show, even if this has been done for domestic political purposes, it's still been done to show us as our own identity, with our own voice, willing to put our own position forward. And I do respect the decision makers for doing that.
Actually, when you listen to Winston's statement, he argues it's a good argument. He makes a good argument. I mean, it's, as I say, it's sophisticated, but it's there's a lot of depth to it. He makes a good argument.
This is going to surprise you, Duncan. I would seriously consider voting New Zealand first at the next election.
Wow!
Almost entirely on the back of this statement. I mean, that's how important Israel to me is for starters. But yeah, it's fast approaching, mate.
Selfish choice there.
Yeah, I'll have to get you a bad tie and a bad suit, but we can find that.
But yeah, he's absolutely positioned himself as a statesman, not just in New Zealand, but on the international stage. I just think it's an amazing move. Incidentally, I've accused him of being captured by ideological creep by the boffins at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. But either he hasn't been, or I've unfairly maligned them as well.
Can you imagine under Helen Clark her allowing the Foreign Minister to release this sort of positioning statement? I mean, Luxon, to his credit, I suppose, delegates all this stuff, doesn't he? But Winston really is, he's prime ministerial.
He's also in a safe spot. I mean, I think the Foreign Minister role is just Winston. He's brilliant at it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've seen a few comments from people saying, "Oh, this was a joint decision. It wasn't just Winston." Well, it's true to some degree because Seymour said something very similar a couple of weeks ago, which incidentally was why I thought Winston was going to go the other way because he reacted so strongly to that. But clearly, it was simply because it was a statement he felt it was important for him to make. But secondly, I think that the Nash had very little control over this. I think Winston made it very clear in negotiations that I'm Foreign Affairs Minister and it's my territory and you leave it alone.
Yeah, no, he's certainly looking impressive on that front. Hey, in Wellington, there's these Dixon Street flats that were sold by Kāinga Ora because they're in a state of repair. They need a lot of work, and they were sold to the local iwi, Taranaki Whānui, for $1 million, $1.03 million. That iwi got the first right of refusal, so buys them and then sells them to a developer 2 weeks later for an extra $2 million profit. That's called flipping. What do you reckon of this, Ashley?
I'm going to surprise you with my view, and I'm going to presage it. I'm going to presage it by giving you a bit of background. So in treaty negotiation settlements, there's a well-established formula that's been around since the 90s. And I'm sure that one of your viewers will correct me if I'm wrong, but sets payment of treaty settlements at about 4 cents in the dollar, which basically means that for every dollar they could have claimed, they're actually paid out on provable claims that have been settled, that are paid out at the equivalent of 4 cents. Now, the reason I mention that, and that's, by the way, that's been established across multiple claims, and there's even a clawback clause that says that if they ever go beyond that 4%, that other iwi can come back and claim more based on that figure of gone higher. Now, the reason I mention that is twofold. One is that there is a clause in those settlements which is a right of first refusal, which basically says that there are some scheduled properties in the iwi area which they have the right to bid on before anybody else does, and this would have been one of them. It would have been scheduled.
It was, yeah.
But secondly, and this is probably the bigger issue for me, in the context of Kāinga Ora and the incompetence of that organisation over the last 8 years and the amount of money that it has squandered on the part of the public, this couple of $1 million that the iwi's making, it's a percentage point on a spreadsheet. I don't care, and good luck to them. I'd far rather we focused on getting Kāinga Ora to actually operate properly and spend our money wisely.
Rawdon?
So one thing I will say is whoever in the iwi managed to pull the deal off, good on them, because it seemed to me as though it was lined up before they ever actually signed their own purchase agreement. So they're obviously pretty smart and they're onto it. So from a Kāinga Ora perspective, and I've worked with them a bit this year on a few properties, Their process is very established, and I don't really understand in this situation why these didn't go to the open market. But what they do is they get their own valuation, and they have to stick to that. Now, if the market presents buyers who are significantly below that valuation, they have to be able to justify it potentially with another valuation, but they don't just sign it away, say, oh, we've got a deal, get rid of it. They will fight. This is our experience in a residential market in Auckland. They will fight to get that top dollar on behalf of New Zealand. So they're not just giving this stuff away.
We do know what those numbers are, Rawdon. We know that the rateable valuation on it's 18.9 million, I think.
Correct.
And the purchase valuation was 4 million. And this crowd that have bought it off the Iwi have paid 3, I think. So
So the question there is why it didn't go to the open market, and you've covered that off. And that's the question, because thankfully most of the stuff, before we all throw our toys out of the bath at Kaingaora, their process at the moment is put it on the open market. Here's the valuation. That's what we expect you to try and get.
Yeah. So the issue here then is that they clearly want to redevelop these flats, and the only one who's really in the market to do it is the developer Castle. So it seemed to me like it was a closed shop deal right from the start. But couldn't Kaingaora have tried to get more money for it? Like $1 million is just give it away for nothing.
So that I guess
putting it on the open market.
Yeah, I guess that comes back to my point, which is if they had right of first refusal, did Kaingaora want to buy into a fight with what probably would have become a public fight with Iwi over that site for the sake of, and I know this is going to sound glib to some of your viewers, but $2 million in the context of Kaingaora's budget, which runs into the billions, is a decimal point.
But as a practice, though, you'd have to be careful that this is not repeated, because then the taxpayer doesn't get much value for money.
Yeah. Which
Very
comes
true.
back to the fact that they have got that very accountable process in place if it's taken to the open market.
Yeah. I suppose the transparency, I mean, it has been pretty average, to be honest. There's been lots of questions that have been asked and lots of answers haven't been forthcoming, actually.
With regard to this transaction or in general?
Yeah, this transaction, because it sounds like they're pretty good usually.
Yeah. And from what Rawdon says, and he's obviously in a better position to judge that, it sounds like their process is actually pretty straightforward. So I suspect that there are some aspects to this deal that we haven't been privy to through the media. It was interesting when I first got the note that we were going to talk about this. I thought it was actually going to be about Wellington City Council, which of course this is their stock and trade as deals of this kind. So and this one would have been on the better side of the ledger relative to some of the things that done over the last few years. So there's something in the water clearly in Wellington that works against doing a reasonable deal for both parties.
So how does the flipping work then? Rawdon, it's within 2 years you've got to pay tax, don't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's still the case. You don't see a lot of flippers around. Oh, no, that's not fair. They are back in the market because there are so many great deals to be had, but they're all very aware of their sums in order to build that in.
Yeah. So it's within 2 years, right, Ashley?
That they can flip without paying tax?
No, if you flip within 2 years, you pay tax.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So as long as they hold it for longer than that, and most of these guys would take that into account, and they factor the tax into the equation because they recognise that they're going to buy and sell within that time frame and do it. But yes, in fact, I used to argue when I was talking about this stuff that if you were taking more than 2 years to trade, that you were a lousy trader. So these guys would actually recognise that.
But actually, that's a good point, though, actually, because the flippers, and there aren't nearly the multitude that there used to be, and it's because they are good at what they're doing, and they have also compromised the fact they're not going to double their profits in a 2-month deal. That those sort of golden pickings aren't necessarily there because of the cost of actually getting the place ready to flip.
Yeah, although the Iwi's made $2 million in 2 weeks, and look, some parts of me say good on them. To be honest, if you're smart enough to be able to be in the know and be negotiating them, then good luck. Just staying on that sort of theme, the Auckland University was looking at having compulsory tikanga courses for some of their students. Ashley, that's been pulled back now. It's been pulled. David Seymour's ecstatic about it. It says it's a big victory. You can't force anyone to do anything really at university, can you? You can't make anything compulsory.
So it's my day of surprises. So again, So I actually don't have a problem with language. So I separate from between language and tikanga. So language, I'd actually argue that kids and first, second, third, fourth-year-old kids should be learning Māori alongside English. I just think it's part of the culture and it's part of what they should be picking up, and that should be compulsory. I would, however, argue that when you get to uni, that it shouldn't be compulsory and it should be something that's optional. And where I have an issue is with tikanga. So the difference being that Māori is just about the language itself. Tikanga is about the customs and some of the spirituality and the religion that goes with it. And that there's been attempts to embed that into this stuff. And so, for example, you saw with the Real Estate Agent Authority a year or so back, where they were trying to basically impose it on registration, so that if you didn't do that multi-unit, which included tikanga, then your registration wouldn't proceed. It's that stuff I have an issue with, and where that's being taken out of the system, I'd stand alongside Seymour and applaud. But the language, it's who we are. It's native to this country.
But it should have been done earlier. I mean, if you're going to force it to be done compulsorily at university, then you missed the trick for the last 20 years. Much easier to learn a language between the ages of 0 and 5 than it is when you're 22. Rawdon?
100%. I mean, there's not much to add, really. You've got to. I'm absolutely with this. When we've got the youngsters, we should be exposing them to all the values and all the principles and all the wealth of culture and language and heritage of New Zealand. But I've got one who's just finished uni, one who's in the middle, and one who's about to go. It's a lot of money. They're working damn hard, and in the time they're not studying, they're working to pay for their lives. And the last thing they want is have to embrace something being forced upon them. Now, if they choose to, fantastic. But there's no point trying to get a 20-year-old or 18-year-old to embrace something which, for the first time in their lives, they've got a situation that they're making their own choices.
Yeah. What's wrong with you, Ashley?
Oh, many things. Where do you want to start? If it were new as that sort of show, I would have written a list.
Just finally, I want to look at Erica Stanford. There's all sorts of suggestions coming out in the past 48 hours because she did so well in that Mood of the Boardroom survey that she's difficult now to work with. She doesn't delegate. She does it all herself. Well, that's been so successful so far. Ashley, do you think it's just sour grapes from someone, maybe the competition?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So I did a bit of research on this just to find out where this claim had come from, because there was some talk about her not attending some PPTA event at the last moment, but it's not from there. The suggestions actually come from Audrey Young, who's a well-known journalist, and the inference that it's come from within Parliament itself. So it doesn't take a brain surgeon to take that one step further and assume it's probably come from within her own caucus. And why is that? That's because she's now being talked about as a potential leader. So, you join the dots together. I suspect what's happening here is that somebody who also regards themselves as a potential leader is recognising that she's now a rival and is trying to muddy the waters for her. So that doesn't mean it's not true. It's important to note that it may well be true, but it's being done for subversive purposes, not simply because somebody's trying to do has got the best interests of the public at heart. So what it does suggest is that she's clearly got momentum and she's clearly got resonance, and that's starting to impact on her fellow caucus colleagues.
It's a nasty place. I mean, I reckon it's probably come from Willis or someone like that, because Willis and Bishop are, so close. So it'll be someone like that. Rawdon, it won't surprise you, will it?
No, it doesn't. You can narrow it, as you just have, down to about 4 names, and that's people who probably potentially see themselves as leading the National Party either before or after the next election. But I mean, you've got a hat tip to Erica Stanford. If she's got people worried, it's because she has been so effective. If she's so effective because she doesn't delegate, right? Everyone learn from it.
Yeah,
we did see that stoush that she had on air on Hoskins' show a few weeks back, which gave us a little tiny bit of an insight into maybe a side of the personality that's not polished that we don't normally see. So there may be some truth to this, but yeah, clearly the knives are out. By the way, it's also you heard it here first. It's also an indication that maybe there's some work starting to go on behind the scenes around a change of leadership in that party.
Yeah, well, I reckon that's exactly what it is. So, I mean, and I've covered a lot of these coups over the years, and tried to start some of them even, tried to finish them. And this is what happens. Whispering campaigns, and then destabilisations, and then attacking potential competition. And that's where we're at now. I think you're right, Ashley. I think this is starting to boil up, starting to bubble.
Well, it follows the process, doesn't it? We've had the whispering campaigns. We've had the mainstream media starting to question Luxon's leadership through to the next election. And guess what happens a month later? With a convenient mood of the boardroom in the middle.
Rawdon, I haven't asked you this, but Ashley and I have spoken at length about this. But what's your take on Luxon?
I don't know what the alternative is. That's my take. And again, we have these conversations at home, and people in the house are saying, don't have confidence, can't see myself voting in that direction, based purely on economic performance. And my question is, what's your alternative? Which comes back to the whispering games.
Yeah, well, there's always an alternative, because if people are put in that position, they have to step up. That's what happens. I mean, I've looked at the Labour Party over the years and thought, how could these guys be government in 9 months' time? And they were. And people stepped into it, and they take on the role. There's probably 2 or 3 options. That's your problem, Ashley.
I broke. Both of you dropped out there, which suggests it's probably at my end. So
I'm just saying that there's probably 2 or 3 options, not just Stanford.
So we've talked before about the combinations. Bishop and Willis, Willis and somebody else, Stanford and possibly Simeon Brown. There's a number of different combinations that you could see working. I go back and forth. I think when we talked a few weeks ago, I was very much in the Bishop camp, and I probably still am. But it comes down, as we said a couple of weeks ago, Duncan, to who the other party in that leadership team is. Yeah,
I think Rawdon, what do you think? I mean, I think it's a Bishop, Stanford
so
Bishop.
For me, when I talked about what's the alternative, I was talking much more of a party alternative to my youngsters. So. Where would you see a better direction and better decisions being made? As far as the alternatives within the National Party goes, you've got someone who's potentially needs to win an election. You've got to have someone who's very well versed, very well experienced, knows how to handle adversity, knows how to just get the job done. And it sort of does end up being the Bishop factor. So I don't think there's any issues with that from my perspective. I don't know who I'd see alongside him.
Well, maybe he's the closest thing we've got to a Steve. We don't have a Stephen Joyce in that caucus, but he's the closest thing we've got to one.
Well, I wonder for Luxon, though, if you're taking Luxon into an election, he will lose it. So you want to take someone in that can win it. You see the difference there? The difference is that Luxon is seen as someone potentially already, if you look at the mood of the boardroom, they've written him off. The business community of New Zealand has written off this leadership of this party.
Duncan, that vote is not going to the left. That vote's going to New Zealand First Direct. So in that respect, I still maintain, as we've said, that regardless of what happens with the leadership of the National Party, we've still got a centre-right coalition government after next year's election. Yeah. Maybe one on shaky ground, but it's still going to be back in.
One where Winston's your Prime Minister.
Well.
Okay, let's do the editor. And for the record, Duncan, I don't rate televangelist economists, Jacob or Bagri. One desperately clings to the caste system by riding a baby elephant. The other's an incoherent drunk outside a kebab shop at 2 a.m. Who's who? What's wrong with this guy? The Daily Horoscope delivers better advice than those two. Okay, thanks for that. Right, that is us, folks. Thanks, Lockie. Thanks, Brody, for putting it all together. Really appreciate it. It's busy times at the moment. We're squeezing all these podcasts into a little gap. So we do appreciate. I really do appreciate the hard work you guys are putting in. Don't forget the subscription service, exclusive subscription service of $7.99 a month for extra content, bonus interviews, bonus episodes, and my weekly newsletter. That's all available now, so jump online and you'll see that. Probably jump on Rover. It's probably your best spot. And I do appreciate you considering this, because it'll keep the podcast on air, and it means that you're joining up for $7.99 a month, less than the price of, coffee these days? $7.99? Must be close to that now. Pies are about $8 now, aren't they? And, of course, it's less than the cost of a beer. And it keeps Team Duncan on air, keeps us asking these questions and giving you this content. That's us, folks. Remember, life's no dress rehearsal. There is no curtain raiser. This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth, so get out and enjoy it. Take care. We'll catch you tomorrow. Ta-da.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, sponsored by the Brothers Green. Feed your gut what it needs. Digest Gut Health Protein Powder. I use it myself. It supports natural digestion and gut health. Made with premium Canterbury-grown hemp powder and a unique blend of active kiwifruit enzyme powder and kiwifruit skin extract, offering natural prebiotics and a nutrient-rich profile to complement a balanced lifestyle. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch.